Assalamualaikum and a very good day to panel, speakers, lecturers, SIP committee members and also fellow friends. My name is Hanis Nazurah and I will be presenting on thematic analysis on architect risk related to modifications of COE in design bid procurement. Design bid procurement has been a growing trend in Malaysia since its first implementation by the Public Works Department in 1997 because it offers single point responsibilities, better time of scheduling, cost and also qualities. However, previous research has identified DB procurement as the riskiest type of procurement as most of the risk on the employer has been transferred to the design bid contractor. The question raised was, were the risks being shared among the design bid contractor team, especially the architect who acts as the principal submitting person. Currently, there is no standard COE issued by the governing bodies for architect appointing design bid procurement. Therefore, the terms in the COE tends to be modified to suit the needs and requirement of the design bid contractor. The aim of this paper is to identify risks on the architect's appointing design bid procurement related to the modification of the COE. Previous studies highlighted significant amount of research on stakeholder risk in design bid procurement. This illustration shown Sankey diagram of previous literature studies on the stakeholder risk in design bid procurement from 2011 until 2021 using Atlas TI9. This shown that the studies on the risk related to the architects is growing until the recent years, which makes this study still relevant. From the same articles and journal, analysis has been conducted on the risks associated to the stakeholders and findings shown that identifying project scope stipulated in the contractual agreement contributes to few risk factors which include project risk, legal risk and so on. Therefore, it is actually important to identify modification made to the standard COE of an architect appointing the design bid procurement and risks associated with the modification. The first stage of the study conducted a documentary analysis of COE of an architect in 3 selected case studies of a completed design bid project. The findings shown that the terms are either highly consistent with the standard COE or slightly modified and also highly inconsistent with the standard COE. For further understanding, a semi-structured interview has been carried out with 5 respondents from the case study. This paper will focus on the thematic analysis of the interview to identify cost, implication and risk related to the modification. Thematic analysis on the verbatim were done using Atlas TI9 software adopting the 4-stage framework from Anderson and Saldana, which includes 1. Familiarization of data, open coding to create initial codes, categorizing of themes and also analyzing themes. Upon analyzing the themes, it will be narrated based on the main themes which has been identified. The initial codes shown in the table were identified using the respondent's own words. A total of 60 initial codes identified on the cost and implications of the modifications, and also 57 initial codes identified on the risk related to the modification. Similar initial coding will be merged into the same codes. For example, no VO, no extra fees, no reimbursable can be merged into the same categories of fixed amount of fees. The initial codes will be then categorized into categories. 9 main categories has been identified on the cost and implication of the modification, while 7 categories has been identified on the risk towards the architects due to the modification of the COE as presented in the tables. The themes and final themes are induced based on the categories mentioned and triangulate with the previous literature findings. This paper will present the final themes identified from the thematic analysis of the verbatim. Using Atlas TI9 software also, apart from identify categories and themes on the verbatim, it can show illustrations on the connection of each attributes of the categories and also themes. This slide shows findings on the thematic analysis of verbatims to identify risks on the architect related to the modification. 3 main themes has been discovered on the cost of modification, which are time constraint, financial constraint, quality control. This reflects that the design bid selection factors discussed by previous literature, which are time, cost and also quality. Design bid procurement offers project delivery in time with fixed cost amount and better quality, as the design and construction were done by a single organization, which is the design bid contractor. Hence, some of the terms in the standard COE has to be modified to suit the nature of the design bid procurement. For example, The stage payment of fees for an architect has been modified to back-to-back basis instead of following the standard stage payment of fees. The back-to-back basis payment reflects the payment made to the design build contractor by the employer. Since most of design build contracts offered fixed contract amount, hence the architect fees also offered on the same basis and are not in accordance to the scale of minimum fees. There are also additional terms established in the standard in the COE in order to control quality of works, including design work such as terms on assignment. Case study shown additional terms on assignment which describe that the architect is not allowed to assign any part of the contract to third party without approval of the design build contractor. This was done to control quality of works by the architect. It is also to ensure no miscommunication happens in delivery of information that will cause design error that is not fit for the intended purpose. This modification will seek to have implication toward process communication and also legal. Some of the term has been established or modified for better clarity of terms. For example, terms on dispute settlement. Standard COE only gives options on dispute settlement, either mediation or arbitration. However, in the case study, it was further described that in the case of dispute, it will be referred and submitted under the Arbitration Act. Being asked about the modification, the respondent responded that the additional terms is to make the process easier on dispute settlement as they are more familiar on submission of dispute claims under the Arbitration Act. As for implications on communication, design build contractor is responsible to engage all consultant and subcontractors, including architect for both design and construction works, and being held liable for the team's performance. Thus, there are some additional terms that being added into the COE to control the performance of each members and avoid miscommunication. Some of the modification has been said to have legal implication. For example, numerous unanticipated changes to the scope of work, which resulted into scope alteration and also resulted into claims and contract dispute between the contracting parties. From the cost and implication of the modification identified earlier, risks on the modification are further explored. There are 5 main risks that has been identified related to the architect, which are financial risk, design risk, time risk, competency risk, and also quality related risk. It has been informed that the architect appointed in design build procurement is at risk of non-payment, especially for pre-tender works, because it is always a success bid basis. In the case of non-successful tender submission, the amount of work for tender preparation won't be paid and leads to the financial risk. Other than that, since there has been an absence on employer and architect relationship, the architect always been excluded from technical meetings with the employer, and depending fully on the written requirement prepared by the employer, misinterpretation of employer's brief will result into design error and contributes to design risk. As for risk related to time, case studies shown that COE of an architect shown exact duration of engagement, which reflects duration of engagement of the design build contractor contract. However, the time related to the term has not been specified, such as LAD and extension of time in the case of non-completion of works. Thus, the question raised was how this modification will actually affect the architect in the case of non-completion happen. Other risk that has been identified is competency-related risk. As the leading role in the design build procurement has been taken over by the design build contractor, competency of each stakeholder is the most significant for a successful project delivery. It started with the competency for the employer's team in stipulated detailed project brief and requirements on the project, and also competency of the design build contractor and his team to interpret the employer's brief and requirement to avoid design error and jeopardize the successful project delivery. Last but not least, the quality related risk. As quality in design build procurement usually does not specifically means construction quality of works, it also involves design quality and also specification that fit for intended purpose and within the specified contract amount. Inability of the team members to produce quality design, specification and also construction works will lead to exceeding contract amount at additional cost for reworks and rectification of works. This will also be resulting into financial risk. As mentioned earlier, some of the implication and risks might relate to one another as construction process is not a linear process. Some of it were overlapping works of different team members, especially the subcontractors' works. It is important to identify risks on the architects in the design bid procurement, as it will be the initial guides in drafting the standard COE of an architect in design bid procurement, which it will be reviewed by a few governing bodies, and also for a better and equal distribution of risk. So for that, thank you very much.